All right, here we go. We talked about distance formula, but we're doing something a little different today. We're still on the road. This is the 5-mile marker. This is a 15-mile marker. And you decided, hey, look, I don't want you to have to drive 10 miles this way, and I don't want to drive 10 miles this way. So let's do this. Let's meet where? In the middle. Let's meet in the middle somewhere, okay? And there's McDonald's right in the middle, but between us. I love McDonald's, and so we're gonna meet. We're gonna meet at McDonald's right in the middle. So you got to figure out, okay, what exit, what mile marker are you gonna be right in the middle? Yeah, this is a pretty easy one. Okay, I picked easy numbers for us. So watch. The whole distance is how much? We talked about this yesterday. The whole distance from here to here. It's 10, right? It's 10. So if I'm going to go halfway, from here, I'm going to go half of 10, which is what? 5. 5 from here, or 5 from here. All right, so 5 plus 5 is 10, or 15 what? Going the other way, minus 5 is 10. So where's the midpoint? Okay, it's at 10, right. So I'm going to be at the 10-mile marker. That's where the golden arches are, okay? So you could do that. You could figure out, watch. Are we listening? You could subtract and find the distance. The distance is 10. Take half of that and then add it to this. That's a couple extra steps that you really don't have to do. Let me think of another way. How else could you take 5 and 15 and get a 10 out of it?
Multiplication of 5, 5, 10, 15, like that.
Yeah, but I want to do some math. I want to add something, subtract something, multiply, divide. What can I do math-wise to get 5 and 15 and come up with a 10? Okay, but let's think. We want to think more in general. You're right. You could add 5 to this, but how did you know how to add 5 to it? I mean, what if we had like, this is mile marker 73 and this is mile marker 258? Now, you don't know exactly how many add in between off the top of your head, do you? Okay, but let's think of a nice, easy way to do it on these easy numbers, and then we can apply that to these numbers that are a little bit tougher. So let's take 5 and 15, do a couple things to it, do 2 things to it to get 10. Come on, think about it. Mess around with 5 and 15 in your head. Do some stuff with it, and then come up with a 10. Subtract 5 from 15? Yeah, okay, that'll give you 10, but is that always going to give you the midpoint? What if we were at 73 and 258? If I subtract those, is that going to give me halfway in between? No. In this case, you're right, it does give you a 10. Okay, I kind of picked a number that worked out that way. It's not always going to work out that way. Think of something else. Think of 2 steps. 2 steps with 5 and 15 that's going to give you a 10.
Add them and divide by 2.
Very, very good. Add them up. Watch. What's 5 plus 15? 20. Divide that by 2. What do you get? You get 10. That'll work every single time. Okay? If you add the 2 endpoints together and then divide by 2, you're actually going to get the number that's right in the middle. Okay? Let's pick some other numbers. Let's pick like 3 and, 12. All right? So let's figure out what's right in the middle of 3 and 12. Now you could do this. You could go 12 minus 3 is 9. Half of 9 is what? Half of 9? 4.5. And then it's 4.5 from this way, so you could add 3 plus 4.5 gives you what? 7.5, right? You could do it that way. That's actually an extra step that you don't have to go through. It's a lot easier to do what? 3. What'd you say, Kristen? Or Christian, what'd you say? I said Christian. What'd you say? 3. You said 5 plus 15, right?
20.
And then divide by 2. So let's do these numbers. Let's go what? 3 plus 12 and divided by 2. So let's see what we get. That's 15 divided by 2. What's half of 15? It's 7.5. Isn't that where we said we should be?
Yes.
Absolutely. Look, let's take a look at this crazy number. 73 plus 258. Let's add those together. 73. What's that? 11, that's 12, and that's 13, and that's a 3. All right? Tell you what. Let's make this a little easier, just for the sake of math, okay? So let's say that's 330. What's 330 divided by 2? 300, that's 150, that's 165. All right, and so that would be the middle, okay? If I was going this way and I wanted to find out what's in the middle. Now look, you can use a calculator if you want, but it wasn't that hard to do, was it? You take this and add it to this, divide it by 2, and you've got the number in the middle. Make sense? So that's what we do. What if we had this? What if we had, this is in general now, okay? This works with anything. What if we had x1 and what? x2. How do you think we can find the point that's in the middle? All right, x1 plus x2, good, and divided by 2, very good. Now, that works for anything, right? Because whatever that point is, you put in for x1. Whatever that point is, you put in for x2. You add them up, you divide by 2. What if we were going up and down? So we're not doing x's this time. What would we do? So that'd be a y1, and this would be a y2. So how do you find the one that's right in the middle? Good. y1 plus y2 over 2. You with me? Okay. By the way, I haven't officially said this. What is the point that's in the middle? The midpoint, right? We call this the midpoint. Does make sense, right? It's not like a crazy word that you would never think that would go with that. It's perfect. It's mid, right? Because it's in the middle, and then it's a point. It's the point that's in the middle. Midpoint. Everybody got it? So this is how we find the midpoint. If it's horizontal, we just add the x's, divide by 2. If it's vertical, we add the y's and divide by 2. But as you saw yesterday, it's not always going to be horizontal and vertical. It could be what? It could be diagonal. Good. At a slant, right? All right, so let's draw an x and y axis right here, and I'll tell you what, we'll change the color just so it stands out from that. Now watch, what if you had this? I'm not going to put any numbers on there because I want to deal with x's and y's. All right, so this point right here would be called x1, y1. This point right here would be called x2, y2. Put a comma in between. All right, I want to find the midpoint. You with me? So where do you think the midpoint? Stop me where you think the midpoint is. Right around in here? Okay, that's pretty close. We'll make it big. Okay, so it's probably around in there somewhere, isn't it? Now, how do you find that midpoint? Watch. If I go, here's the x1, and down here would be the x2. If I go halfway on the x, and then here's the y2, and here's the y1. If I go halfway along the y, guess where I'm going to be? Yeah, I'm going to be right there. So watch, smack dab in the middle, right? So let's go, watch this. What if I go, well, that point wasn't exactly accurate, was it? That's okay. Let's do this. Let's get rid of that. All right, and let's go from here straight up, like this. It's pretty good. Oops, went red. Why did it go red? I have no idea why it went red. I'll tell you, that irritates me. Let's make it green. Is it that green? Yeah. Okay, now watch. And it went to the x. I don't know why I went to. I think it's still right. But look, how did I find halfway of this? I went what? x1 plus x2 divided by 2. How did I find half of this? I went y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So look, if I go half of this, I'm going to be right here. And if I go halfway up, I'm going to be right here. Guess what? Boom, 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 boom. It goes right here, and boom, right there. It's supposed to be straight. A little wiggly. You get the idea, don't you? So half of this, that puts you half of that diagonal line. So let's come up with a formula now.
Okay.
So watch, the midpoint is equal to, now what is this thing? It's not a distance, is it? It's an actual point. You follow me? This is an actual point. It's going to have an x and a y to it. You with me? So a midpoint formula is going to look like a what? A point. How do I find half of the x? x1 plus x2, what? Divided by 2. How do I find half of the y? y1 plus y2 divided by 2. That right there is the midpoint formula. It's not just one number, is it? Now look, I said this even to my honors classes. Catch on to this, all right? Because even some of the kids in the honors classes didn't completely get this. The midpoint is a point. You're going to have two different problems. You're going to have a problem, I'm just making this up, okay, where they give you 2 points, -5, 7. All right, I'm just making these numbers up. You're going to have two different styles of problems. One problem is going to say, find, what did we do yesterday? Find the distance. Good. All right, so one problem is going to say find the distance. That answer is going to look like just a regular number. It's just going to be a length of a line. Are you with me? Okay, so it'll be like 7, or it'll be 8.2, or sometimes they come out square roots, don't they? It'll come out like the square root of 53 or something like that. That's what that answer will look like. But then there's a second style of problem that's going to say find what? What are we talking about today? Find the midpoint. That's right. It'll say find the midpoint. What will that answer look like? Will it just be just one number? Say it, Azaria. It'll be a point. Okay? It'll be a point. It'll have an X part of it, and it'll have what? A Y part to it. You follow me? So when it says find distance, you're going to get just a regular number answer. Sometimes it could come out to a square root. That's still a number, isn't it? Square root of 17 or whatever it is. That'll be that kind of an answer. The midpoint's always going to look like an ordered pair. Believe me, I've taught this year after year after year, and I still had people, after we go through this, the question will say, find the midpoint, and somebody will say the square root of 17. Is there any way a midpoint can just be the square root of 17? No. A midpoint has to look like an ordered pair. You got it? So keep that in your mind. Write a little note to yourself in your notes. Say a midpoint has to be an ordered pair. A distance is just a number. All right, so that you remember. All right, let's do an example with that. I tell you what, let's just, well, let me see the example in the book, and I'll see if I want to use that. Yeah, we'll just do the one in the book. Nope, let's just use this number right here. Let's just use this. I made that up. We'll just use that. It says find the midpoint. Okay, I'll write it all down here. Find the midpoint of, or between, it'll probably say between, okay, 3, 2, and what else? -5, 7. All right, so let's do that. What's the midpoint formula? It's an ordered pair, isn't it? So what do? I add the x's together, don't I? Say up here, x1 plus x2, so add the x's. Kenny, what'd you say? 3 plus -5, or you could just say 3 minus 5, couldn't you? Divided by 2, right? Because that's what your formula says to do. All right, let's do the y's now. What are my y's? 2 and 7. So I go 2 plus 7 over 2. Let's see what you get. What's 3 plus -5? -2, right? So it's -2 over 2, which will be -1. We'll do that in a second. What's 2 plus 7? How about 9 over 2? So here's my answer. Simplify it. What's -2 over 2? -1. And you can just keep this 9 halves if you wanted to. Or if you wanted to, you could change it to a mixed number. What would that be? What would 9 halves be? 9 over 2. Half of 9. Say it. 3. It would be 4.5. Okay. I would be fine if you kept it 9 over 2. Write it as an ordered pair. Okay. Make sure you write it as an ordered pair, and that would be your answer. That seems even easier than distance formula, doesn't it? Do you think? Yes? No? Anybody talking to me today? Okay. You think it's easier than distance formula? I think it is. I think it's a little easier. So there you go. Let's do another example. This is a little bit tougher. All right? So we'll pause this. All right, what we're going to do is they say, here's line segment JL. We want to find point J. So think of it this way. That's a J, that's an L, and we are given the midpoint, which is K. Now, it's not horizontal, it's slanted, but I'm not going to draw it out for you. This is what we're going to do. They tell you the midpoint. What's the midpoint here? Is it 3, -5, or -1, 2? It's -1, 2. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to write -1, 2 equals, now look, I'm going to set it up on this formula, x1 plus x2. Now look, there's one point that I don't know. I don't know this point J, do I? I'll call it x1, y1. So I don't know that, so I'll call it x1 plus, but I do know the other endpoint. What's the other endpoint? It's this one right here. What's the x? It's a 3. I'm going to put it over 2. Let's do the same thing with the y. I don't know the y, but I do know the other y for the other endpoint, which is -5. Put that over 2. Now watch quickly. I know I'm going fast, but you can look at it tonight on YouTube. Do you see this right here? That should equal -1. So x plus 3 over 2 equals -1. Multiplied by 2. I'm running out of time. X plus 3. I can't finish. Sorry. Boom.